Hello, everybody. It's been a while since I have filmed and uploaded a video. I think my last video was probably my November wrap up. And then holidays came, and then just life. And then I really have no other excuse other than just being plain lazy and having a lack of motivation. So I thought that I would try and get myself back into the habit of doing some filming and at least talking about what I read each month, because I do miss that. I do miss sharing what I've been reading, and I've been trying to upload pictures on Instagram of my monthly wrap-ups with the pictures of the books that I've read, but I'm not really giving any description of what I've read. So that's kind of what I've been doing, but I do kind of miss talking about my thoughts about some of the books that I have read. So I thought I would start with my March wrap up. March wasn't the greatest reading month that I've ever had, but I figured it was a place to start. And then at the beginning of the year, I started, like a lot of people, a reading journal. It's got mostly about reading. There's a few other things in here that track other stuff besides reading, but if you want me to do a flip through of it, just let me know down in the comments, because I've been good about keeping track of everything that I've read, and I've kind of been using it as a little bit of an art journal. I'm not an artist by any means, can't draw any or do any of that stuff, but I have a ton of scrapbook paper, washi tape, all that kind of fun stuff. So I've been using that to kind of decorate and kind of embellish things. But this was what I did for March. I kind of just did this little March cover page, and then this is where I kept track of the books that I completed. And then I'm still doing the Book Tacto card with Book Democracy, that Facebook group. So I have still been getting those cards each month and doing those. But this was my March one. I don't know if you can see that. So yeah, I'll go through what I completed in March. The first book that I finished was actually an audiobook, but I have the physical copy. It was Excavation by James Rollins. I've had this book forever, but just could never get around to reading it, so I decided to check it out on audiobook, and it was okay. I gave it 3 stars. It wasn't my favorite James Rollins. It's kind of one of his standalone books. It's not part of his larger Sigma series books, but it was good. It was very similar to another one of his standalone books called Amazonia. So it was about a group of scientists. This one takes place, I want to say, in Peru. So it's kind of about the Incans and just them trying to, they're not really treasure hunters, but they find a lost civilization and that kind of thing, and they get into danger and have to be rescued and all that stuff. So it was okay. But it was just very similar to the other book, so it was kind of like reading the same book over again. The next book that I finished, and I don't have a copy of this because it was a library book, but it was The Andromeda Strain by Michael Crichton. This I gave 2 stars. It was about a group of scientists studying an extraterrestrial virus. And I finished it right before all this coronavirus stuff started happening. It was just starting to kind of peak. So it was kind of timely that I ended up reading that book. But yeah, and I think it was written in the late 60s, maybe 69, if I'm correct. But it's about a satellite, an American satellite falls into the desert, and attached to it is an extraterrestrial virus that kind of wipes out this tiny little town in the desert. And then this group of scientists have to study it and figure out how to stop it and all this. It was just super dry and very heavy on like the scientific information about how, the different equipment used and studying the viruses and things like that. So it was very heavy on that kind of information. So it made it really dry and not very entertaining. But I guess for the time that it was written, that stuff was like very new. Like, your average everyday person didn't know about this kind of, this type of study. I would think. I'm not an expert. I'm not a doctor, so I don't know. But it just sounded like it was written as a way of like educating people about the different types of medical advancements when it came to studying certain things that had never been studied before, if that makes sense. So anyway, not the greatest book I've ever read. The next book that I finished was another audiobook, and it was called Beneath These Chains by Megan March. This was the second book in this series of books that I have read or listened to. And I think this one was my favorite. It's very explicit. It's very hot and steamy. I'm just going to put that out there. Lots of language, lots of scenes. So if that's not your thing, this is probably not your book. But it's very much you've got your alpha male character and your girl character who's not like a damsel in distress. I mean, she's a strong girl, but he's like gonna protect her and rescue her and all that stuff. So it follows a guy named Lord, and it explains why he has that name. And the girl's name is Elle. And Lord runs a pawn shop in New Orleans. And Elle comes to him for a job, and he doesn't understand like why she wants the job there, because she's comes from money, and she's more of like a high society type person, whereas he is not. But she has her reasons. And so she ends up getting a job there, and then it just, they develop a relationship from there. There is a kind of a murder mystery type plot that runs through it as well, but it's real thin. It didn't really add a whole lot to the story. It was just kind of put in there to kind of just have something extra to explain a few things. So that whole thing, it was kind of thin and, doesn't really add much. But the characters, I thought, were developed very well. I mean, you're not reading these books for great literature or anything. They're purely guilty pleasure and escapism. But it is good to have good characters. And I thought these two characters had like a great, they played off of each other very well, just in general, like not like in the bedroom, but like outside of the bedroom. They had a great rapport with each other, and I liked the way they interacted with each other. And with the alpha male character, it's not obnoxious. It's not like the caveman type character, but you get the sense that he's a strong guy. He's gonna protect her, and that's what he wants to do. And it's not like him trying to control her kind of thing. So I ended up giving it 4 stars. I've since listened to another book in that series, and I think there's about 7 of them, but you don't have to listen or read them in any particular order. They can stand alone, but you do get different characters from previous books, the later you go on in the series. So you do see some of those past characters pop up every now and then, but you don't have to read them in any particular order to, enjoy them. So, but yeah, I gave it 4 stars. I really liked it, and I do plan on reading a couple of more in this series. The next one that I finished was Anne of the Island. Oops, sorry, there's a glare. This is the 3rd book in the Anne of Green Gables series. I'm participating with a lot of people in the Anne-along that's hosted by Tia from Tia and All the Books and Amanda from the Curly Reader. So since January, we've all been reading through the Anne of Green Gables series. In March, we were up to Anne of the Island. I gave it 4 stars, but I will say it's probably not my favorite of the Anne of Green Gables books. But I just don't think I can give one of these books less than 4 stars just because I love them. But this one follows Anne. I think she's like 18 by this point, and she goes to college. And I think it covers a span of 3 or 4 years while she's in college, and just her and her friends. And it was kind of funny, like, reading this and how it relates to present day, you know, when young girls go off to college, and, you know, at first they might live in a dorm, but then they might get off-campus housing and live with each other for a couple of years and have that college experience. And so I thought, you know, even for it to have been written, I don't know, early 1900s, it's still relatable, I thought. But it just follows Anne through her college career, you know, with her friends. And then there's Gilbert, who, you know, is in love with Anne, but she doesn't see it or doesn't want to see it. And then finally, you know, you get your happy ending, but then it continues on into the 4th book, which is where I'm at right now. And the last book that I finished in March was the true crime book, I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara. It was the book written about her a kind of obsession and a search for who she called the Golden State Killer, who ended up being caught like right after this book came out, or right around the time when this book was coming out, but she passed away before she knew that. And she passed away actually before the book was finished, I think. So, which was sad that she didn't really get to realize all her hard work, you know, that kind of, you know, probably helped in the resolution of this case. But overall, I gave it 3 stars. It was not the best true crime book that I've ever read. I felt like it was a little all over the place. Like, it jumped around in the timeline. So I couldn't really get a sense of the timeline of the crimes. I kind of like my true crime books to be a little bit more linear. So, like, you know, start at the beginning and then move to the end. This one, I felt like it kind of jumped back and forth in time. So I couldn't keep up with where certain crimes were committed and when, and it was just a little bit jumpy to me. So, you know, overall, it wasn't the best, but it was interesting. And then especially knowing what happened, you know, in real life. And I didn't look up anything about this, the Golden State Killer, until after I was done. I just didn't want to know anything about it until after I was finished with the book. So after I was finished, I went and looked him up to find out, like, okay, like what information that she was able to kind of pull together throughout the years was actually true and applied to him. You know, like the profile that they had kind of built about who they thought this guy was, and a lot of it was very accurate. So it was interesting to see how through her diligence with, like, other people on the internet too, kind of pulling together information and putting together a database of stuff to find out who this guy was. So it was good in that way, but overall it wasn't like gripping to me. It was more of like a memoir about her experience of trying to track this person. So anyway, so those were the 5 books that I finished in the month of March. So overall, it was an okay reading month. Nothing spectacular, but, you know, reading's reading. So I enjoyed it. And, yeah. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I feel like I'm a little rusty at doing it, but I'm going to try and stay on top of it and keep going and, you know, keep bringing some content here and not neglect it like I have for the past couple of months. So anyway, say hi in the comments, and I will see you next time.